What's up, guys? Prince Sports here. You know the usual. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. What I want to talk to you guys about is a lot of people always wonder if you zap another player to another era, how would he perform? Things of that nature. That's what we're gonna do today. So how will LeBron James stack up if he played against every era of basketball? All right, where would he be ranked, and how much points would he actually put up? That's what we're gonna get into today, and we're gonna start off with the 1980s. Okay, now the 80s was a time full of rock and roll. A lot of guys was drugged out, stoned out, fast times, fast cars, people dressing all weird, partying, time of cheesy movies, but one thing was in common was the sports. Okay, now the sports in the 1980s was blooming, especially the NBA, fast paced. A lot of those guys, they were naturally gifted, naturally in shape. They didn't have the type of workout regimen that players do today, but they were still very athletic type of dudes. Now, where will LeBron James rank in the 1980s? First, I'm gonna give my pre-stat projections, okay? In the 1980s, I think LeBron James will average somewhere around 29 points, 7 rebounds a game, 6 assists a game, probably like 1.9 steals, 1.9 steals, sorry. And he probably do all of that on 50% shooting, okay? Which is very efficient. Now, depending on what team he'd be going to, that would determine his team's success. So I'm gonna zap LeBron James on the Cleveland Cavaliers 1980. LeBron James gets drafted on the Cleveland Cavaliers. All right. His teammates, he has the Bulldozer rookie Bill Lambert. He has Cliff Robinson later on in the years, and he ends up playing with World B. Free. So he's playing with a couple of decent players, but that Cavaliers team in the 80s was a wreck. So I don't think they would went too far if he played on that Cleveland Cavaliers team in the 1980s. So he would have spent a lot of time getting waxed because his teams just wouldn't been that good. But the top 5 players of that era probably would be: number 5, I'm gonna go out with the true Black Jesus, Moses Malone. Okay, now if you don't know about Moses Malone, he was a beast. All right, Moses Malone from 1980 to all throughout the whole 80s was putting up double digits, giving people the business. Okay, a flat out scoring machine, a beast. He had the little rope gold chain. He was living that 80s life. First year in 1980, Moses Malone had 25 points a game. Went from 27, 31, 24, 22, 23. And then like the last 2 years of the 80s, he averaged 20 points a game. Okay, so he was giving cats the business. Moses Malone was definitely a top 5 player in the 1980s. He just didn't have that much team success, but he got a championship though. So, Moses Malone got his ring because, he went to the 76ers, so he got a ring there. And that 80 76er team was a beast, especially the 1983 76ers team was a beast, all right, with Dr. J and all them boys. Number 4 would have been yours truly. Some of you guys know already, the guy that's starring in this video, LeBron James. Okay, LeBron James would have been the 4th best player in the 1980s. Okay, and he would have put up those stats that I just mentioned up early, most likely. Number 3 would have been Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Okay, Jordan came into the 80s, 1984, but while he was playing in the 80s, this guy had 30-point seasons. He had a season where he averaged 37 points a game. So Jordan was a beast in the 80s, a walking force of scoring. He was a scoring machine in the 80s. His team just wasn't up to par yet because they didn't came of age in the 80s. Number 2 would be Larry Legend. Okay, Larry Bird. All right. You already know, one of the greatest small forwards of all time. The guy was lights out, a shooter. He was a beast in the 80s. And of course, if that's the number one, the number two player in the 80s, then the number one player in the 80s gotta be the Magic Man, Magic Irvin Johnson, baby. You know, 5 chips in the 80s. One of the greatest point guards ever to pick up a basketball. Actually, the greatest point guard to pick up a basketball. This guy could see over the defense because of his height, all right? And he was a walking triple-double. He could have did that way before Russell Westbrook if he wanted to, you know? But, you know, Magic just was out there looking to get that W win. Fast times, fast 80s, all right? So that's how those players would have ranked in the 80s if you ask me. You know, 1980s, baby, fast times. Now on to the next one. Into the stage of the buckshot shorty. Woo! The 1990s. All right? This was my favorite era in terms of music and lifestyle. This is the era that made me. You know, from the entertainment to shows like Married with Children. You know, I loved the Al Bundy back in the 90s, The Simpsons. Man, I loved it in the 90s, man. And one thing I love about 90s basketball was that brother with the bald head rocking the number 23. Michael Jordan, baby. Who didn't want to be like Mike back in the 1990s? You know, this guy arguably was one of the most famous basketball players ever to pick up a basketball. You know, hands down my favorite era. And I can't forget to mention my homeboy Nas. You know, as a fellow Queensman, we all wanted to be like Nas in New York City. You know, Nas, Mobb Deep, the infamous. I still rock an infamous Mobb Deep shirt to this day. You know, R.I.P. to Prodigy. All right. Now, how will LeBron fare against the 1990s? Okay, this era was very known for bigs, guys that played the 5 position, 4 position. It was very dominant in that. Now, the perimeter players in the 90s, a lot of them were undersized. Okay, they were decent players. Okay, but at that time, you still didn't want to build your franchise around perimeter players in the 1990s. You know, Jordan was the exception to this rule. But, you know, for the most part, it was dominated by bigs. Alonzo Mourning, David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing. The list goes on and on. They even had good role players. Borderline all-stars like Ronnie Cycli from the Miami Heat, which was a suspension team in 1992. The Heat was hot. Also, you had Brad Daugherty was an all-star, you know. So you had a lot of bigs. But how would LeBron James fare out in the 1990s? All right. So my prediction for him would be 28 points a game, probably like 6.2, 6.3 rebounds a game, 9 assists a game. He would have been dishing like crazy in the 90s, and 2.1 steals on 48% shooting from the field. Okay. Now in the 80s, I gave him 50, but in the 90s, I'm gonna give him 48. All right, because bigs clogged up the lane a little more. The game became a little more slower paced in the 90s than it did with the faster pace, you know, coked out 80s, you know. But things got a little grounded in the 90s. Okay, and the 90s was just that era where you had to prove that you was tough. You know, it was a tough era, man. Everything about the 90s was tough. You know, but my top 5 plays for the 90s would be number 5, David the Admiral Robinson. Okay, he was a beast back in the 90s. He's number 5. Number 4 would have been the mailman Karl Malone. You know, he was LeBron James like in terms of being dominant and powerful. LeBron is a little more skillful than Karl Malone. Karl Malone needed John Stockton to get his shot off a lot, but he would be number 4. Number 3 would have been the Dream, Hakeem Olajuwon. All right, 2-time champion. He stashed them 2 chips up in 1994 and 95 when Jordan left. He definitely took the title for best player in the game back then. All right. Number 2 would have been the guy that's about in this video. LeBron James would have been the second greatest player in the 1990s. And number 1, of course, would have been tongue out guard from 6'6", North Carolina, Michael Jordan. All right. Now, what team would I place LeBron James on? LeBron James would have been on, again, the Cleveland Cavaliers because he got drafted to it. So let's say he got drafted in the 90s to the Cleveland Cavaliers. He would have been playing with the likes of Mark Price, Brad Daugherty, Larry Nance Jr. Woo! With LeBron James, that team is a title contending team. They would have gave the Bulls fits. And I loved it, that Cleveland Cavaliers team from the 1990s. It was just fun to watch. And when you paired them up with the Bulls, it was entertaining. I loved it. You know, I think Jordan's Bulls would have beaten that Cavs team even with LeBron James on there. But there'd have been a season or two when LeBron James would have got off. He would probably beat them. How many championships would LeBron James had in the 1990s? Playing on that Cleveland Cavaliers team, he could have probably sneaked in 1 or 2 when Jordan retired. But in the early 90s would have been his time to try to get one. Try to get one of those chips. I don't know if he would have interrupt Jordan's three-peat, but he would have got one. He would have got one in the 90s, either 94 or 95. He would have been battling against Hakeem. The late 90s, when 96 to the rest of the decade was over, I think LeBron would have stood no chance because the Bulls just had the league on lock at that point. It was the best organized team. They had all the right pieces. There was no way LeBron would have beat them during that time. But LeBron would have had at least 1 to 2 championships in the 1990s. Now, I didn't answer this question in the 1980s. How many chips would LeBron had? I think LeBron James probably would have had 0 chips in the 1980s because, again, he played on that messed up Cleveland Cavaliers team. All right. So that's my predictions for the 1980s and the 1990s. 2 eras I wanted to cover the most because those are the 2 eras that I like the best. All right. 2 eras that I'm more familiar with because that's what I'm all about. 80s to now. All right. So I'm going to have my special guest star, Hannah Sports. She's going to tell you about the 60s and the 70s, even though she's not from that era. She's going to tell you about that. Where will LeBron James be ranked? She's going to do like a quick draft, you know, after doing some research, where will he be ranked? So she's going to cover that. Anyway, on to the next one.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Prince Sport channel. This is Hannah. So let's talk about LeBron James. Oh, I know Prince Sport talked about the 80s and then the 90s already, so I'm here to talk about the 60s and then the 70s. So let's start. In the 1960s, LeBron James would average 30 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, a game on 51% shooting. So this is the top 5 best players would be in 1960. So number 5, Jerry West. Number 4 is Bill Russell. Number 3, of course, LeBron James. Number 2 is Oscar Robertson. Number 1, Wilt Chamberlain. So now, let's go to 1970. So LeBron James would average 26.2 points, 8.1 rebounds, 6.7 assists on 52.6% shooting. So my top 5 players of 1970s are number 5, Walt Frazier. Number 4, Elvin Hayes. Number 3, Julius Erving. Number 2, of course, LeBron James. And number 1, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So that's it, guys. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to Prince Sport channel.